How frustrating is it when you have a perfectly good computer, but it's not running the way it should because it's so bogged down with viruses and malware? Did you know the body and brain are the same way? If we don't fix the problems, we'll never be able to function and thrive the way we were intended. Today, we're going to be discussing what steps need to be taken to fix our hardwiring so we can start living the life we've always intended. Stay tuned. This is the second video in a three-part series all about recovery and the life-altering benefits it brings. If you missed the first video, I recommend going back to watch it first so that this one makes more sense. I put the link in the description for you. If you're someone who up to this point has felt like life just hasn't gone as you planned or that you haven't been able to reach the full potential, this series is for you. So we're going to be taking a really close look today at some of the best therapies on the planet. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, do that now before we get started, and make sure and click the bell so I can let you know as soon as part 3 drops. Part 3 is going to be the most valuable piece of the puzzle because it's all about the things that you can do to move obstacles out of your way, to achieve your goals and fulfill your dreams. And then when you combine parts 2 and 3, the sky's the limit of what you can achieve. As I said in the last video, not all therapies are created equal. If you're someone who's been in therapy all your life, or you're someone who's tried it once or twice and thought, this isn't for me, or you're someone who's always known something wasn't quite right but you weren't sure where to get started, today I'm going to give you some really great insights into the therapies that actually work so that you can get started and have it be efficient and easy and not complicated, because honestly guys, recovery is not supposed to take a lifetime. One of the easiest places to get stuck in this big therapy world is in talk therapy, because even though it's one of the most popular and well-known and easily accessible types of therapy, it only scratches the surface for most people and doesn't get you to the point where you can actually dig to the core of the problem. It doesn't give you the breakthroughs that are necessary to get past the past and to make room for new experiences. So then what's the alternative? It's called trauma-informed therapy. And a lot of people get hung up on that word trauma, so before we go any further, let's clear up any confusion about what it means. We often associate the word trauma with things like war or torture or near-death experience, but really a lot of things can cause it. Gabor Mate is one of the leading experts in this field, and he defines trauma as a loss of connection caused by any adverse experience. To put it simply, if there are pain points or chronic stresses or obstacles in your life, chances are there is a level of disconnectedness on the inside. And just so you know, you're in good company. I have only met a handful of people who aren't disconnected with self on some level. And 99% of them have gone through the steps that we're about to discuss in this video. Trauma therapy is not just for people with obvious sources of adversity like physical abuse or sexual abuse. One of the most impactful kinds of adversity a person can face is called attachment trauma. And sadly, it's not only the most common, but it's also the least well known. I talk more about it in this video, and I'll put a link in the description, but attachment trauma actually has a much greater reach than extreme events like war or torture or near death. In other words, the number of people with attachment trauma is thousands higher than the latter group. And honestly, the people who have the most severe reactions to extreme traumas are the ones who in earlier life went through attachment trauma and other adverse childhood events. And in case you've grown up on the expression, time heals all wounds, I'm sorry to tell you, but that is a myth that has been scientifically disproven study after study. In order to get past most negative experiences that we had in the developmental years, it's necessary to go through specialized treatments that are designed to realign the nervous system, including the brain function. It's like a computer. If your computer has viruses, it's not able to function at maximum capacity and often runs much more slowly or even shuts down until you reprogram it. Also, if your computer has a virus, does time solve the problem? No, of course not. What we usually do is learn to work around it and just put up with how slow it is until the virus is fixed. And your nervous system is no different. You may not believe that your life experiences included any trauma, but the way that you've learned to cope in life may reflect trauma that you're not even aware of. As I said earlier, most trauma happens from the ages of 0 to 3 before we're really aware of what's going on around us. Trauma-informed therapy recognizes that a person's mind and body cannot be looked at as separate entities, but instead as interactive parts of a whole. It also recognizes that a person is not separate from his or her environment. What happens to and around them has a profound impact on the emotional well-being of the person. Trauma-informed therapy also recognizes that a person with any sort of unhealed trauma is functioning in an altered way. Trained therapists use all the tools and treatments that they have available to promote healing while making sure to prevent further harm from hyper or hypoarousal. They also recognize trauma's role in the outlook, behavior, and emotions of a person, and that the prevalence of trauma in a person's life is far more impactful than their client usually realizes. There are dozens of these kinds of therapy, but for the sake of time, we're only going to cover a few in this video. And then at the end of the video, I'll give you a link so you can find the therapist nearest you that is best after deciding which therapy you like or feels fit to your case the best. One of the biggest issues a person with past trauma deals with is unresolved grief. So, in my opinion, one of the first things to do is to go through trauma-informed grief therapy, or at least do it in conjunction with the more clinical forms of therapy. Grief counseling is effective when the therapist applies empathy and validation and mirroring, along with asking questions that help you dig deeper or see the situation more clearly. It's a great place to start the journey of recovery, a soft entry point, especially if you've never tried therapy before. One of the major goals of the clinical forms of therapy is to reconnect the mind and body. So you have the muscular system and the visceral system and the physiological system and the energetic system, and they're all interconnected. These systems are all manipulated by our psychology. And so trauma-informed therapy recognizes that in order to reach the mind and to heal the mind, you have to involve the body. Bodywork triggers emotion, which can then be released from the body, which is most often trapped in areas like the gut or the neck region. Emotions like anger and grief and sadness. So the first therapy we're going to talk about is called neurosomatic or bioenergetic therapy. And these therapists create a safe place and then use specific trigger points to release the trauma trapped in those regions of the body. Bioenergetics states that the body reflects the mind. So even though it can seem like these negative emotions are all up in your head, they're really trapped, like literally trapped in your body. And some of the sensations that can prove that are like when you get butterflies in your stomach or when your face flushes from anger or frustration. The emotions happen in your body, but then they register in your mind. So this therapy integrates what's happening in your mind with what's happening in your body, because when you're able to become aware of what's happening in your body, it puts you more in control of your behaviors. Have you ever noticed how people express their anger with their body? Like slamming a door or punching a wall or stomping around or gesturing wildly? So this therapy makes it possible to get in control of your emotions and calm yourself from sadness or anger or grief. What happens to us in the developmental years is that our emotional maturity is actually stunted. So being able to get in touch with a deeper and strongly felt emotional process in the body is actually a maturative process. A way of getting in touch with reality in much deeper ways to give us as much access to deeply felt emotion as we can stand. This gives us a much more sophisticated contact with reality. The next therapy we're going to discuss is called Gestalt Therapy, and one of their founding principles, one that I hear Gabor Mate reference quite frequently, is that a person cannot be considered separate from their environment or their interpersonal relationships. Another major principle is that we are not separate components, but whole with all parts interconnected. Another is that we are defined by how we respond to our environmental interactions. Gestalt therapy states that the hallmark of a healthy person and the goal of their treatment is awareness. To accomplish this, the therapist has the client focus on three main things. Number one, contact with the environment, using the body and the five senses. Number two is living in the present, taking responsibility for the rest of one's life, including the recovery process. Gestalt locates where energy is in the body and how it's being used, and where it may be causing a blockage. They also look for certain physical clues like tension in certain parts of the body or irregular breath patterns, or avoiding eye contact. And also growth disorders, which are just emotional problems caused by lack of interaction with the environment and a lack of awareness. Their approach is to assist you in developing self-awareness of how often you are in the present moment. That allows you to adopt an experiential attitude toward life in which you feel safe enough to try out new behaviors. Gestalt uses several techniques, but one of their key methods is called the empty chair technique, and this is where a therapist facilitates a role-taking dialogue between you and the various parts of your personality. The goal of this unique therapy is to resolve inner conflicts or impasses and to integrate polarities between what the patient wants and societal norms. So the next therapy we'll talk about is called focusing therapy, and it was developed by Jean Gedlin in collaboration with Carl Rogers. It's a way to measure how often you, the client, refers to what they call the felt sense. The therapist has you tune into your bodily sensations and then asks you questions to see what changes occur. They have you sense from within the body because your body can feel the whole problem, whereas your mind is only able to think about it in pieces or aspects. Then they'll ask you to come up with a word or a phrase that perfectly fits the sensation that you're having. This is because sensations provide us with important information about situations, thoughts, and feelings. The goal of the therapy is to learn to stay with that felt sense and listen to its messages. The knowledge of the body can be lost to us, or at least cause confusion, so focusing therapy helps reconnect us with the internal awareness of emotions, which then helps us become better able to readily address them. There are many benefits to focusing therapy, but some of the most common are decreased chronic stress or pain, increased problem-solving and decision-making abilities, and overall increased attentiveness to life, which can positively affect relationships or other life experiences. The next therapy we're going to talk about is called Reparenting, and this is when a therapist takes the role of a concerned and trustworthy parent so that he or she can teach you what a trusting relationship looks like, possibly for the first time in your life. It helps to repair attachments in your life and develop more secure and loving relationships. It is designed to help you recognize and repair non-functional patterns of behavior. The therapist gives you the responses that you should have received as a child as they take you back to the stage where you were wronged to make peace and satisfy that part of you and give you what you should have gotten at that point in your life. There are 3 main types of reparenting, and we'll go into more detail in a later video, but they are total regression, spot reparenting, and self-parenting. EMDR is the next therapy we'll discuss, and it stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. It was developed by Francine Shapiro and has shown great promise in treating most forms of trauma. The goal of this therapy is to lessen the impact that past experiences have on you and lower the triggers that are attached to them. So during a session, a therapist will confront distressing experiences that you had while taking you through a series of eye movements that help you process the painful memory without experiencing psychological overwhelm. The therapy is effective in treating a wide range of issues, including depression, anxiety, eating disorders, panic attacks, addictions, complex PTSD, and many others. The best feature of EMDR is that it only takes 12 sessions to experience major breakthrough. I know that we covered a lot of ground today, but I hope it was helpful, and if it was and you enjoyed it, please give me a like so that it helps others find it. I'm going to put a link to several different resources in the description that will help you get started if you want to hit the ground running and dive into recovery. I'd love to connect with you on social media, so feel free to leave a comment or send me a message on my page, Leah Theobald, on Facebook. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my giveaway, which we do once a week. Be sure to stay tuned in as we complete our series. In the next video, we'll be talking about all the things that can be done on your own to enhance and catalyze the recovery process. Thank you for taking the time to educate yourself on this important topic. Be sure to check out all the resources available in the description. See you next time.